original sin is, but they just won't say. Anyways, I was looking at a picture of Axl Rose and Ozzy Osbourne early this morning. First, let me disclose to you that am I the only one who wakes up just a little shell-shocked every single day? Do you when you wake up in the morning, when I get someone who shows up, I'm gonna ask them this. I'm gonna say, "What is the first thing that you feel or think when you wake up?" Now, Neville Goddard will say, we'll go back to the Axl Rosie, the whole blah 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 in a minute, but basically, if you showed up this morning, you're being subjected to an autistic, pedantic rant that you may or may not want to be part of. It may be a quasi-autistic, pedantic rant. Or quasi? Is it quasi or is it quasi? Quasi. No, it's quasi. So to back up a little bit, where did I start this from? I was just sitting here thinking to myself several things. We'll get back to, I'll get a pen and paper out. Let's just make this easy for ourselves. Hold on. I feel like the fully black screen should bring to mind for anyone naturally the Smell the Glove album. All right. Now, let's see. Oh. Smell the Glove. Spinal Tap. Walmart won't carry your record album. They find the picture of a woman kneeling in front of a glove to be offensive. Smell the Glove. It's an entirely black album. Like the screen in front of you right now. You know what? One of the best songs of all time, Big Bottom. One of the best verses of all time. I met her on Monday, was my lucky Bunday. You heard me right. I am having a, let's see, we're going to take notes here. Anaconda, my Anaconda, the movie, so we can come back to topics and not forget what we were talking about. Ozzy. Axl. What else? Oh, Original Sin. Original Sin. What you thinking? A little fruit on a tree, then we'll see what will be. Original Sin. What you thinking? Anyways, no, we're making jokes now. Don't make a song out of it. We've got Original Sin, Survival of the Coward. Everybody wants to hear a video called Survival of the Cowards, so we can all be really proud of ourselves. Earth is the place where your natural entitlements are thwarted. Okay, you know who else had this busy making other plans point of view? John Lennon. That's right. We're in a deep, deep fucking philosophical conversation. I'm so glad you're here this morning. You must be psychically attuned and you felt that this live. Where did you go? Oh, you laughed. Run away. Run away. Snibbly-dook. Okay, Survival of the Cowards. Original Sin. Ozzy and Axl. Anaconda. My Anaconda. My anaconda. What was that? Sounds like guns. Thunder. Reach in your head with the cold, sudden fury of a divine messenger. Let me tell you about heartache and the loss of God. Wandering, wandering in some hopeless night. Out here in the perimeter, there are no stars. Out here, we as stoned, immaculate. That's Jim Morrison. You can listen to that on an American Prayer album. One of my favorites on that album, though, I'm going to give you another one. The movie will begin in 5 moments. The mindless voice announced. All those unseated will await the next show. They filed slowly, languidly into the hall. The auditorium was both vast and silent. As they seated and were darkened, the voice continued. The program for this evening is not new. You've seen this entertainment through and through. You've seen your birth, your life, and death. You might recall all of the rest. Did you have a good world? Enough to base a movie on. He said he's getting out of here. Where are you going? To the other side of morning? Please, don't chase the clouds, pagodas. Her cunt gripped him like a warm, friendly hand. It's okay, all your friends are here. When can I meet them? Oh, after you've eaten. I'm not hungry anymore. They're women beaten. Silvery stream, silvery dream. Ooh, impossible concentration. Good morning, Archbishop Richard Forstgin, 9338. It is fabulous to see you here this morning. So I'm here to make, I know that there's certain drums that I have a habit of beating over and over again. And the reason why is because, have you ever been traumatized by something? And once you've been traumatized by it, it's like getting on a carousel or a merry-go-round or something, and you just find yourself going round and round. They call it rumination. I think they call that rumination. It means that you have found something that you can't fucking make sense of, and so you just begin to, almost like you begin to encircle it, and like it becomes your prey. And it's like, what's your issue there? You become like a big python, start to strangle it up because you're coming up with ways and hatching plans and going round and round. So my anaconda. But you'll sacrifice your cock on the altar of silence. If you believe it. Words got him the wound and will get him well. Babylon fading. If you believe it. I love how he says that, if you believe it. There's several things that Jim Morrison says on the American Prayer album that he says with such, he says it so right that it's hard to, I'm not hungry. That's one of the lines. I'm not hungry anymore. Are women beaten? Another one is, yeah, man. I think I killed a man. He says it pretty good. Everybody likes that line. Killer on the road, right? Going back in all directions, sleeping these insane hours. He said he'd never wake up in a good mood again. He's sick of his stinky boots. Death, old friend, death and my cock are the world. Can you forgive your injuries in the name of wisdom, luxury, romance? Sentence upon sentence, our healing lament for the death of my cock spirit has no meaning in the soft fire. Death makes angels of us all and gives us wings where we had shoulders smooth as raven's claws. No more money, no more fancy dress. This other kingdom seems by far the best until its other jaw reveals incest and a loose obedience to a vegetable code. I will not go. He said he prefers a feast of friends to the giant family. TV death, which the child absorbs. Death well mystery, which makes him right. Slow train, the death of his cock gives life. Can you forgive the poor old people who gave you injury and taught you God and the child's prayer in the night? Sentence upon sentence, healing lament for the death of my cock spirit has no meaning in the soft fire. He thought to himself, words got him the wound, so they must get him well, if he believes it. All join now in lament for the death of his cock spirit has no meaning. A tongue of knowledge in the feathered night. Boys get crazy in the head and suffer, right? One night while going to the pier, I ran into two young men. The dark, freedom. The blonde, enterprise. We talked and they told me a story that went something like this. Let me tell you about Texas radio and the Big B. Soft, driven, slow and mad like some new language. Reach in your head with the cold, sudden fury of a divine messenger. That's why I listen to Jim Morrison more than Eminem. Either you're closing your eyes to a situation you do not wish to acknowledge, or you're simply not aware of the caliber of disaster indicated by the presence of a pool table in your community. A pool table? Well, yes, sir. Then you got trouble. Uh-oh. You ever try and take and give an ironclad leave to your old self from a 3-rail billiard shot? Well, just as I say, it takes judgment, brains, and maturity to sport above-line game. While I say any boob can take and shove a ball in a pocket. Now I call that sloth the first big step on the road to the depths of degradation. I say first, medicinal wine from a teaspoon and beer from a bottle. Next thing you know, your son's playing for money in a pinchback suit. Listening to some big out-of-town white guy here to tell about horse race gambling. Not even a wholesome trotting race. No. This is a race where they sat down right on the horse. I'd like to see some stuck-up jockey boy sitting on Dan Patch. Makes your blood boil, I should say. Now, friends, let me tell you what I mean. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pockets in a table. Pockets that mark the difference between a gentleman and a bum with a capital B, and that rhymes with P, and that stands for pool. Now, I know all you folks is the right kind of parents, and I'm going to be perfectly frank. You want to know what kind of conversation goes on when they're loafing around that hall? Bevo. Cubans. Tailor-mades like cigarette fucking fiends. And they was bragging all about how they were going to cover up a telltale breath with sense in one fine night. They left that pool hall headed for the dance at the Armory. Blonde-haired men and dark-haired men. And strange, ragtime music that'll grab your son, your daughter in the arms of a ungle animal instinct. Mass hysteria. Friends, the idle brain is the devil's playground. Trouble. Billiard parlor walls come tumbling down. Well, band will do it, my friend. I said, yeah, boys band. Do you hear me? River City's going to have her boys band, and I mean she needs it today. Well, Professor Harold Hill's on hand, and River City's going to have her boys band as sure as the Lord made those little green apples, and that band's going to be in uniform. Johnny, Willie, Teddy, Fred. Can you hear the thunder? Wait. Is it rolling drums and clashing cymbals? Do you feel a sudden tingle, an electric thrill like I feel when Gilmore, Pat Conway, the great creator, and W.C. Handy? No, you forgot someone. No. John Philip Sousa. All came to town on that very same historic day. Oh, billiard parlor walls come tumbling down. Survival of the cowards. Okay, so let's start from the Daegu mouse study. The Daegu mouse study is a study on mice who, over a period of time, have evolved to anticipate a relationship with both of their parents, mom and dad, and they have a profound social environment that they grow up in. And what they did is they tried to put the mice from birth into single mother households, even if there was more than one mom and the moms had help and everything was provided, to see if the mice would have issues. And then they did testing on the mice afterwards, like in Ferngully, to see how they could think and how their brains were working, and of course dissected them, observed them, the whole nine yards. And so what they found was that although the Daegu mice have no effective means of going to counseling and have a therapist break it to them that their fundamental intrinsic needs have been foundationally flummoxed and frustrated, they still nonetheless develop ADHD-like symptoms and behavioral problems. All these mice that were raised in these single-parent mother homes, even when they were provided for well under the scientific care of these doctors, they said, even if they didn't lack anything, the mice that were being raised nearby with the two-parent typical ritual Daegu environment that they've evolved over a millennial to expect were doing just fine. And the mice who had been in the disrupted environment had major behavioral issues that were lifelong. And so sometimes I think this idea of salvation or salvation by performance is a root of human beings having a fundamental entitlement to be both regulated and seen at birth. And when that right that's developed over a millennial evolution is defrauded and frustrated, then you have a creature that has all these biological problems, not because of a subjective understanding of abuse, but rather because of a impact that would happen no matter what, because it was the supplying of the regulation and the being seen was and is an entitlement of an organism. An entitlement, like a plant is entitled to water, and a plant would feel that entitlement to water, like a narcissist feels entitled to hurt you. So where are we at in the pedantic rant? Michelle, hello. Chicken said something. Hi. Archbishop, hello. So what has happened is that when people moved into cities, you can't really keep track of people. In a tribe, if you act out of the framework too much, you get blackballed and sent out into the backwoods alone, which is a fate, some say, worse than death. And so when people moved into cities, a certain amount of anonymity began to build up around humans who are both breeding and living now in an artificial environment that is a form of captivity, like a prison planet. And so as they're living in cities, what happens is those people who are the biggest cowards, those people who are willing to defraud other people of their intrinsic rights and frustrate them in order to enslave them, in order to sacrifice people and everything else, in order to turn morals or ethics, as morals are useless, but ethics at least into a accoutrement and nothing more. because of the biological necessity of survival at any cost, means that those beings that were the most fit to throw ethics out the window, because survival of the fittest just means whatever the environment is, those who are fit for that environment surviving. So if you're in a totally unethical city environment with anonymity where people can just take advantage of other people and gain off of other people who can't, basically by preying on people who can't fight back, then what you have is a situation where those who are the most fit are the biggest cowards, and those who have the biggest ethical burden are killed off, say, in a plurality of people, such as the Jesus factor, which I do not take to be a literal man, but rather a percentage of society, roughly 10%, that has a more tribal, a natural, more tribal back, like a throwback to before the domestication. So to explain, like, humans are mostly right-handed, but 10% of humans are left-handed approximately all the time. And they say even though left-handedness shows up more often in left-handed parents, if all the left-handed parents, God forbid, were killed, left-handedness would still show up at exactly 10% from the right-handed parents. It doesn't matter, because left-handedness will always show up at 10%. And so even though we've been living in cities for thousands of years, in general, there's a 10% factor in general with human genetics. Another example is when they tested people who have the brain structure to become pedophiles, because they can find it on an MRI, EKG, or whatever when they're looking at their brains, and they just show them normal pictures of kids. Their brain doesn't light up in a normal way. But what they found is that when they found in people who were pedophiles from scanning their brains, they found that 10% of the people with the brain structure never offended. Further, approximately 10% of people, according to the Stanford baby study and the researcher Karen Wynn, who published in the 2000 Journal of Nature and has continued to do research on babies, and you can watch a 60-minute special called Babies Born Bad. She demonstrates that 13% of babies are naturally tribally ethical, meaning that they stay with their ethics despite in-group preference. Regardless, there's no in-group preference, city genetics. So essentially, to me, her study demonstrates that there is, once again, a 10% approximately throwback group who doesn't apply to the more recent add-on in the city genetics, where the genetics that have been surviving have been those that are fittest for the city. So 10% defy that. And so that 10% is always going to try to be ethical. And as you can see in the tipping point of society study, it only takes 10% of people to steer 90% of people. So the ethical 10% of tribal people probably were the natural leaders. And in order to have city development, those people have to be killed. So if you look at ancient Middle Eastern cities, underneath, archaeologically, under all the cities, there's a mass human grave. And that's why they say that the cornerstone of hierarchy is, or cities, is rather human sacrifice, mass human sacrifice. So Jesus, rather than being a single figure, there was a lot of people named Joshua involved in political movements at the time that the Bible was written. But rather than that being a literal thing that we're so focused on the one person, that's really not a big deal. We're focused on the plurality of it. He even said in the sheep and goats, as much as you did it to the least of these, my brethren, you did it to me, right? He's a plurality. So then that means that Jesus is a factor. It's a 10% factor. It's the tipping point of society factor. It's the percentage of people it takes to steer society, which used to be dominated by people who had predominantly tribal type ethics that were built in over a millennial of development, and has been supplanted more recently with people who have a different set of ethics and use a code rather instead. And this can be further expanded on by one Julian Yang, how he wrote a book. And in that book, he explains that people used to have a connection between their right and left hemisphere, and their left hemisphere would get source essentially from their own right hemisphere. Sort of like the Freeman on Arrakis in the Book of Dune, wearing the water suits. They weren't getting their water from torturing others because they could access their own right hemisphere. So they didn't have a Molech, as Professor Sam Watkins puts it, between their right and left hemisphere, which has to cause their left to seek to source other people's right by performance. And so what happens is that before, people used to have a God part of their mind that would speak for God, and the right hemisphere would be connected to the community and creativity, and the left hemisphere to your individuality, and these would be connected. And so when Korah was arguing with Moses, Korah was saying, hey, all people, like Julian Jang says in his book, have this access to God. Moses, why are you trying to make it just you? So in Yang's theory is that the reason why these stories are there is they're types of telling us that humanity crossed over into a phase where the emergence of the singular consciousness was what we were trying to do next. People didn't have a concept of wives even before that, or spouses. They had mates in pairs for periods of time, and but there wasn't a sense of a couple just living together throughout their whole life necessarily like that, the way we think of. And so with the little nuclear family. And so they say that because of the nuclear family and men being left alone with children in a city environment, the proliferation of the genes of pedophiles have continued, because human genes will, survival of the fittest means whoever survives. If you were given food and water, even if it was for a nefarious purpose, and if a nefarious purpose was more person who had power and was more likely to keep you alive than a good person who was killed because they defied the power structure, then you were kept alive for that reason, and therefore the genetics reflect that. And so in epigenetic and the methylinization on the epigenetics and other things, and so, and echoes. And so basically, Jesus is just the natural leadership portion who is put aside for hierarchy and for the city. It's just the tribal people. And then when they move into the city, because the people have a natural sense of, as the tipping point of society and the Stanley Milgram study show that 90% of people will capitulate to the leadership. People have this sense of that, where they're just like cows in a herd. When lightning strikes, they all stampede north. Well, humans, when they're faced with social rejection, their frontal lobe goes offline and they just go with the strongest leader in the peer group to avoid a destruction of their own genetics, most likely. And so in that case, because of knowing and understanding how human genetics work, people or a group of people could exploit that system. And original sin then is really just the idea that you're born thinking that you're not entitled to something that you are entitled to, which is regulation and being seen, right? And so, but they have to put this idea of original sin on people so that you somehow deserved being born as a slave, or being born into child abuse, or being born into this, or being born into that, so that you'll stay that way. If you were born into a tribe, it would never be put on you from day one to think that you were born into an original sin. Now, if there is an original sin, it would be that we have cities on the planet and that they've ever been allowed to proliferate. If you want to call something a sin.